Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to the Skymaster F18 assembly build series. Yes, we have a messy bench because we are in the middle of redoing the elevator. So I did this elevator in the last video and I am making some modifications to it because I'm not happy with it. And we're going to apply those modifications to the other elevator when I get them done. So I won't show you in depth what the process is, because the process is very similar to the previous video, but I will show you the changes that I made and the why behind the changes. So if you guys have any questions, don't forget to post them down below. Also, to support the channel, give the video a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button down below if you haven't done so already, and let's get into this. All right guys, so I'll show you why I'm redoing the elevator. So I'll insert a picture here. Basically, with the way this was all spaced, the manual tells you to get this as close as possible to the fuselage. So the problem with that is if you do that, you only get 2 bearings in the receiver portion. Okay, so there's space for a whole nother bearing to make contact. So this is what was kind of happening previously. So my goal here is I want to get this spaced out so I've got 3 bearings in contact, just like this other side here that doesn't have the servo horn mounted on. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. If you look at the manual, and there was a couple comments on my previous video, doing those cutouts in the surface is basically necessary in order to get the 3 bearings in contact with the receiver. So this is light aircraft ply. So what I mean by that, if you don't know, is it's basically got 3 layers to it. So kind of a hard layer, a soft inner layer, and then a hard layer on the outside. And what we really want to be screwing into is aircraft ply, which is what this is, right? So if you can see, if the camera focuses in, it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 layers to it, so it's a lot harder and it's less prone to crushing. So what we're going to do with this is we're going to make a couple pieces that we're going to glue to the back side of the servo opening, and then we'll drill those holes again. So then we'll be going through the light ply and also screwing into the aircraft ply. So that should totally reinforce this area and make it a lot stronger. Because what's probably going to end up happening is this area, and this is all as per the manual and others' comments, but this area is going to be ground down out of the skin, and that allows all the clearance needed for the servo horn and everything. We're going to do that, make that as tight and minimal as possible, but it just makes for a better surface and obviously less chance of having any issues with this massive surface on this plane. So that's what's happening, that's why I'm doing it, and let's continue. All right guys, just for reference here, so this was the screw I was using previously to hold it in. It was just coming out of the back of the wood. This is the new screw, so we've added a little bit more space on to space the servo out, plus that additional aircraft ply on the inside. And so I'm using these screws now to fasten the servos in, which are a 1-inch screw. So, all right guys, finally got everything lined up. You can see I added the cutout there. I still have to do it on the bottom side as well too, but that's kind of what we're looking for. We're going to add a couple washers behind those servo, or behind the bearings, just to get them spaced out about another millimeter, but that is the alignment. Okay guys, so that's what I'm talking about there. So I added 2 more washers behind the bearings. That just spaces out the bearings a little bit, so all 3 bearings are in contact with the receiving surface. So I'm going to plug that in now, and we'll see what it looks like. All right, guys, we are officially done this left elevator now. It was definitely a lot of work. Happy with the result now. All the bearings are in contact with the receiver portion. Everything moves nicely. The cover works good. So I haven't checked movement yet, but the manual recommends 85 millimeters. Okay, so one kind of important thing here is the spacing. So when I put this all back together, neither of these servo horns would work. And okay guys, so when I put this all back together, neither of these servo horns would work. And now the reason for that is at zero stick or mid stick, the bearings, I'm just going to hold them like this so you can see, the bearings sit forward on the receiver. And when you move the surface, either forward elevator, back elevator, it moves like this, is how it travels. So if your servo horn is too long, it actually doesn't allow the surface to go to mid-stick because it's actually sitting out here rather than sitting back there. So this one definitely wouldn't work. It's like 25.4 millimeters. It's just a little bit too long. The silver JR servo horn would work. I don't know if the camera is going to pick it up, but those holes are a little bit shorter on this one. So what I did was actually put it in this this more rear hole on the silver arm, which actually works out better because when you plug it in, it sits about there, and then you still have plenty of travel in that surface. And we're also going to get better resolution with the servo the closer we are to the center point. So I think that's going to be better. And so that's how we ended up doing it here, and it worked out well. Just so you have it as a reference, the measurement on that hole spacing is about 19 millimeters on that guy there. So that's how we ended up doing this, and now we are going to complete the other elevator to match the left elevator. So one last little point, guys, about the elevator surfaces. The manual talks about basically grinding this, I guess call it the skin down all the way to the former work. So I've left quite a bit there. Don't do that. You don't need to cut all that space out. That would actually have brought it to about here, and it's just not necessary. So you only have to take out as much as you'll need. Do as little as possible to begin with, and then just add more as you need to. But that's how much we ended up cutting out. So it really is not a whole bunch, but it would have been a lot more ugly had we cut out everything the manual suggested and just done it. So just pay attention to that if you are building one of these. All right, guys, so the elevators are all done on the F18, and they work great. So happy with all the progress on the elevators. There's a quick shot there of what they look like, why you need to do the cutouts in the elevator, so the servo horn clears. All right, guys, so next thing we're going to work on getting set up is the ACTUONIX Linear Actuator for the Airbrake. So the way this works is we have a standard fiberglass piece there which fits a golden clevis. Okay, and we've got, we're going to mount the actuator in this area, the base, and that's how it's going to sit, like that, obviously. So what this actuator is replacing is the air actuator. Okay, so that's how it's going to be set up. And these actuators are super cool. If you've never played with them before, the nice thing about them is they work just on servo positions. So there's no controller for them. I've got this hooked up to the throttle channel right now, and as I move that throttle stick up, the actuator extends. So you can play with servo movements to adjust it, and pretty awesome little setup. So now what I need to do is I need to create a system that goes from their their mounting system to work with this golden clevis. So they do include a couple different styles of hardware here, and so my thoughts behind this is easiest thing to do. So we're going to use this thread-in piece. We're going to drill a hole in the end of the threaded piece. Then we're going to glue some threaded 440 rod into the end, and that'll allow us to attach our clevis on the end. So nice and simple, and should work quite well. So what I need to do is I also need to glue this base into the airframe, but I want to get this hooked up first, so it is hooked up, and then we can glue this in position and make sure it's nice and centered. All right, guys, and actually even an easier thing to do is just drill a hole, treat this like a ball end, thread the rod into there, about down to the base there, and it works beautifully. So, yeah, that should be awesome. We've got this set up, and now we will put this in the airframe and work on getting that glued in. All right, guys, so we are all set up on the Airbrake. It's working phenomenal. For now, I just put it on the left slider here on the radio, and we can always switch that. But the nice thing about having it on the left slider is you can adjust it. So for the initial flights and stuff like that, you can kind of find the point where you like it, and then I guess you could put it on a switch if you wanted to, but works great. And extremely strong. I'm not going to give it a push because this is still not 100% cured where I glued it on there, but great. Those linear actuators are awesome. All right, so just doing some preliminary testing here just to check for space. And I think we got plenty of space in between the pipes and the actuator. The nice thing is the actuator doesn't end up dropping a lot. Kind of stays at that angle, so plenty of space in between the pipes and the actuator. All right, guys, we're going to do a little bit of work with the tanks because we have some preparation to do here. So we're pretty much doing the fuel system as per the manual. So the labeling is a little bit wrong here, but we've got the two saddle tanks, which are back by the turbine area. They're going to feed what's labeled as the top tank or the main tank. And from that main tank, we're going to feed two UATs. So a couple things that we have to do is we've got to take, these are the old tanks. They're damaged and have holes in them. But we've got to take the vent fittings off the old tanks. And those vent fittings are going to be installed in the new saddle tanks. The vent fitting is going to come out T, and then we're going to have that vent line go outside the fuselage. So the vent line's probably going to come to the underside right here if there's enough room on the underside right there. So you can still attach a saddle or a overflow tank to it, but that's basically the fuel plumbing. So we've got to take those old fittings off this one. Just going to use a Dremel and grind that down and get them out. And so that's kind of one of the steps we need to do. We're also going to glue this fitting into the smoke tank. So you need to do a little bit of work there. So we're going to get all these things ready to glue before we high sol everything, just so we're maximizing our high sol usage. And so we got to get that done. All right, guys, so we were not able to get the old fittings out of the old tanks. They had this threaded piece that this fitting threaded onto. So anyways, that's fine. We're going to leave those in the tank. I mean, the tanks are wrecked anyways, but so we're going to forget about that. I do have one fitting that I am going to put in the main tank. anyways, guys, so I'm going to do some high sawing. So I'm going to get this put in place. When I do this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to thread this piece in so it is just, when you look on the inside, you want this to be just kind of flush or a little bit in of the surface. So I'm not going to thread that all the way in. Then I'm going to put some CA on there just to lock it in place. This is the front of the tank. This is the front of the tank facing the forward part of the airplane. So the split in the fuselage is right here. The saddle tanks are behind this tank. So I'm going to have the vent pointing backwards. We have a big vent line. So that's going to go back and then T to the two saddle tanks. And I know there won't be any problems with that. And then we're going to have the two pickup lines. So we're going to have two independent clunks on the main tank. This tank I don't suspect is going to get overly empty anyways, because we've got those massive saddles that we're pulling from first. So that's going to get glued. And I did enlarge the hole on the smoke tank so we can high saw our fitting in place. And we do have some more of these fittings coming from Bob, the guy that donated this tank, for the other tanks as well too. So when we get those, we'll glue those in place as well. But one important note when you're gluing stuff to any fiberglass, so you've got the shiny part of the fiberglass that needs to be roughened up. So you can see it in the camera there. I've roughened up the circle, and then I've also done the same thing on the main tank. I've roughened up the area around the nipple where I'm going to be putting high saw onto the tank. So I'll get these glued in place and I'll show you guys what the finished product looks like. All right, guys, there's the finished product for the main tank. That worked out well. So what I did was I threaded this in, put some thin CA on there, backed this out, and let the thin CA set up with the Kevlar. And then I put a little bit of high saw on the threads, threaded it in about 3 turns, so it's just poking through on the other side of the tank. We just want to keep that vent line up as much as possible so we don't get an air pocket on the top, basically. And then I just filled in with high saw and the most valuable tool in the arsenal, the bent screwdriver. So that's done. We need to let that cure. The main, or the smoke tank is done. Now we do need to apply some pressure on this. You can see that end's lifting. So all we're going to do is we're just going to take a paint can full of paint, go like that, and that will cure nicely. Now those bubbles, I'm going to leave them there because they're not going to interfere with the bung setup that we're using. But if you are using an aluminum cap, you may have to clean those high saw bubbles up. But we're going to leave them there so they cure and they add some strength. But those are done. So saddle tanks, same thing. We're going to be adding one of those aluminum bungs that we used on the smoke tank. We're going to be adding one to each saddle tank and using those guys. So that is how we're going to finish these tanks. We just need to wait for those pieces, and we're also waiting for our parts order for all the other pieces we ordered. So.